People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. I'm Niresh Eliatambi. With me tonight is Dr. Jehan Perera, Executive Director of the National Peace Council. Welcome, Jehan.
Welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
And Jehan is here today to speak on reconciliation, which is a subject that perhaps we must not forget. It's been 15 years since the war ended. So, Jehan, tell us, where are we in this reconciliation pathway?
Well, on the one hand, Niresh, I think that we have progressed quite a lot. And in fact, so much that in this part of the country, in the south of the country, people actually don't think much of reconciliation anymore because there are other problems. There is peace, there is normalcy, and the problem is the economy and maybe politics. So that is what attracts people's attention. That's what they talk about. But if you look at the north, if you go to the north, then I think it is different. Superficially, even if you go to the north, you will see peace and normalcy. But if you talk to the people, then you get a sense that there are things happening which have made them very unhappy. And those are things that we don't see so much in the south. Like, for instance, I was in Jaffna last week, and I met a very senior government official there, and I asked him, I said, you know, things look so normal and peaceful. What's the difference with the south? And then his answer was, well, the laws are made in the south for the north. And his second answer was that we get our letters in the Sinhala language. They still come in Sinhala. Although Tamil was made an official language in 1987, that is 37 years ago, but they still receive their communication in the Sinhala language. Now, these might not seem to be such important things for us, but it makes things difficult for those people, for them there, when they get letters in Sinhala. And also when decisions are made in the south for the north, there are also very big problems that arise from that. And I say that because, you know, one major problem that still remains is that the state, and perhaps the majority also, we tend to look at the north and east through a security mindset and see a threat.
When you mentioned the north earlier, you meant the north and east, or is it?
Yes, but I mean the north and east. North and east, because we don't say south and west, but we say south. But yes, north and east. North and that's a big problem. And I mean, when I was there, one of the issues that arose that people were talking about was of a school in the north that had arranged that had its sports meet. And for the sports meet, the children, they decorate their tents, the house tents, inter-house competition.
Of course.
They decorated their house tents. And one house had decorated that house tent with images, paper images of war tanks.
War tanks?
Yeah.
Okay. Battle tanks.
Battle tanks. And another house had decorated its tent with images of a flower, the Tamil national flower, which, as it happened, the LTT selected to be the national flower of Tamileelam. But it's a flower that has ancient Tamil roots, just as the red and the yellow are traditional Tamil colors. LTT used them, but that doesn't mean that those are LTT. Now, what the sad thing was that after the sports meet, this was reported to the police. And then the police went, and now they are inquiring into this matter. The principal and the school teachers and some of the children were questioned, had to go to the police station. So then this creates bitterness, anger, that people are being treated this way. And this shows that there's an unresolved problem in our country. See, in the South, we don't think about it even. We are thinking of the economy and other issues and politics. But in the North and East, this issue is festering beneath the surface. If you go and as a tourist, you see peace and you see some measure of normalcy and people shopping because there's money that's come from the diaspora, so people have money to spend, especially in Jaffna. But there are these other problems going on. Letters coming in Tamil, in Sinhala, to Tamil people which they can't read. Decisions made in the south of the country that impact on them, which they are not participants in.
So these are practical problems, Jehan.
Yes.
For example, the official government letters coming in Sinhala, even in the south, for non-Sinhalese people, the letters very often still come in Sinhala. And if you question the ministers and the government department heads, they will say they don't have enough translators, which is actually true. There's a dearth of translators in the country, but that situation doesn't seem to be getting any better. So it's a practical problem which should be addressed, but doesn't seem to have got any better over the decades.
Yeah, the problem is that there is no political will to address this problem. I mean, in 1987, Tamil made an official language. But the government not investing enough, not treating it as a serious problem. Now, other countries which have also had ethnic conflicts like ours, for instance, Canada, which in the 1960s, the province of Quebec wanted to separate. Even now it wants to separate probably. There are many people separatists in Quebec. But and there was a little bit of terrorism also in Quebec in the 1960s.
Quebec, of course, speaks mainly French.
Yes, French, yes. And then the Canadian government took action because it's similar to Sri Lanka, where maybe 3/4 of the people speak English and 1/4 speaks French. But the French people feel that they are equal nation to those who speak English, and they want their language recognized and also the language of the state. So what Canada did was that it made the French language being bilingual compulsory. If you wanted to rise in the state system, if you're going to get promoted, you have to speak French as well as you speak English. So the roads, all of that, they have it in the both languages, and in their packaging, etc. So there's a great commitment in Canada to ensure that the French and English speaking people are treated equally, feel equal, have equal opportunities. In Sri Lanka, that has still not happened.
Now, let's talk geography for a minute. In Sri Lanka, the power is in the western province. Colombo is here, the main port. The province itself has the highest number of people, the population, and obviously the elite, the managers, the directors of the corporate sector, they all mainly live in Colombo or in the suburbs. And the further you get away from Colombo, the less visible you are. This was a problem for the Deep South for a very long time, and the rebellions which arose in the South are evidence of that as well. However, of course, now you have this wonderful highway, the expressway, which goes down all the way to Hambantota and beyond. So it's quite accessible. But the rest of the country is less accessible, and especially Jaffna is as far away, Jaffna, Batiklo, Ampara, they are as far away from Colombo by road as you can get. Does that have a big impact on the way that matters are handled from Colombo with regard to the Northeast?
Yeah, I agree that, I mean, if you look at our statistics, you will find that the Western province has the majority of the industries, I think a huge amount, I think maybe 70-80% of industries are located in the Western Province. The Western Province gets, although it has about 29-30% of the population, gets over 50% of the national income. So that inequality is there, and it affects all parts of the country. But I think in the North and East, the reality also is that people, that there are different communities living there who speak a different language, who have a different culture. So when people here make decisions in the South, make decisions for the North and East, it's very unlikely that they'll be making decisions that those people think are their priorities. You know, it is also true that even in the South, that they will not be, the people here won't be making decisions that those people in the South also think is their priority. But here there is a double burden, that not only are they distant, or not only are they of a different class and social background, but also that they are also different ethnically and religiously.
But not many policymakers from Colombo, policymakers, members of parliament, ministers, not many from this part go out to the North and East very often. They do visit once in a way, but it's not very frequent, is it?
Yeah, and that is precisely the reason we need devolution and sharing of power, so that when it concerns the interests of people who are living far away from you, whose lives you really don't know, who are of different culture and ethnicity, then how can you make decisions when you not even knowing what their real problems are? You're making from Colombo the decision. I mean, that is one of the root problems in our country, and it has given rise to two sets of insurrections. One, the JVP insurrections, where the young people at that time said, Colombo te kiri apita kakiri, that Colombo gets all the benefits and they don't get the benefits. And it also led to the separatist LTT insurrection in the North and East. So we can see that there is a problem in our country of basically of centralized rule. Now we see centralized rule and in terms of the Aragale, of corruption, impunity, which is all there. But the people who revolted also see another problem, that the decisions are being made by people who have no affinity for them. So therefore, we must create systems of government where people of those areas have a maximum of power to decide for themselves. That's what devolution of power is. And that is that principle on which, say, many societies are built. It's called in technical terms the principle of subsidiarity. The principle of subsidiarity says that the lowest level must decide as much as it can, much as possible. Only what it cannot do at its level, then the higher level gets. But you decentralize, you devolve power to the lowest level possible. I think European countries operate on that principle. Even big countries like America, like in America, United States for instance, the schools are run by the city, by the town. The police are run by the city, by the town, even by the university. I went to a university that had its own police force, decentralized, devolved to that level. In our country, we say, oh, we can't trust the people. And no, two things. One is, he said, if you devolve power, those people will make a mess of things. They won't know how to do things because they are less educated.
But the centralized power has created more than a mess,
exactly, yes.
I must say.
And lack of accountability and yes. impunity. That is what, I mean, we have to cope with and overcome that major problem. But apart from that major problem, we have to get over our distaste for sharing of power, devolution of power. That's the system our country needs to go to, so that all our ethnic communities, that we sit together and decide together on issues, not the biggest ethnic group or ethnic nation deciding for everyone. And that's what happened. It happened in our country in a very terrible way in 1948.
So, Jehan, we'll get back to that right after this break. Don't go away.
The People's Platform.
TV1. TV for life. Singharaja, Sri Lanka's precious world heritage.
SLFP implosion takes a new twist. Investigations into missing documents obstructed. SJB appoints Nalin Bandara to coordinate Anura Sajith debate. SLPP's Ranjit Bandara says separate candidate will run for president. Namal, not a candidate for upcoming presidential poll, says former President Mahinda.
TV1. TV for life.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back. We're with the People's Platform with Dr. Jehan Perera, my guest today. Jehan, you mentioned that last week you visited Jaffna, which you frequently do. Did you go by road?
Yeah, I went by road, yes.
Okay, so how long does it take to get to Jaffna by road?
Well, my preferred mode, though sometimes it's a little daunting to do it, is to go in the night bus. And in the night bus, if you take the night bus at say 9 o'clock, you can get to Jaffna by about 4 or 4:30 in the morning. So that's about 7.5 hours. And if you travel in a vehicle, it takes a little longer because in the night the buses speed. They go very fast.
Extremely fast.
Over the speed limit. But in the daytime, the driver is very cautious about getting caught by the police. And, so it takes a bit, it takes about 9 to 10 hours, at least 9 to 10 hours.
Okay, so that's a long way. And this again points to the fact that Sri Lanka does not have a proper highway system or a high-speed railway system. For example, although the western province and the southern province are fairly well connected, if you try to go to Jaffna on the expressway, you get as far as Kadawatha, and that's it. You're back to the normal road, which is the same road that's been there for the last 30, 40 years. So basically, the communications is not there at all, is it?
Yes. I mean, that is one issue. I mean, if it's easier to go to Jaffna, then more people from the south will go there. And actually they'll see that in that part of the country live people very much like ourselves, like themselves. And that is important. That engagement, mixing is very important. That's one of the things that if we are to have reconciliation meaning unity, a country where all communities feel that it is their community, that it is their country, their government, their state, looking after everyone equally. That's that in my view is what reconciliation is. And I believe that there are two challenges we face. From 1948, when we got independence itself, the first challenge was how to decide together rather than the majority deciding unilaterally by itself for the minorities. It started in 1948 with the denial of one of the 4 children of this country. Our national anthem says we are children of one mother. One of the children was thrown out, the Tamils of Indian origin. Their citizenship rights were taken away from them. And for about 30 years, they did not have citizenship rights. They didn't have voting rights. No one cared for them. The politicians didn't care because they couldn't vote. They are still the poorest. So that is one example of the majority deciding. The majority decided. The majority MPs in Parliament decided that this was a good thing, but it was not a good thing. So we had to decide together, not separately. So that system of power sharing is something our country needs to achieve. And the second, of course, is that because of that type of problem where the majority representatives consistently took decisions that the minorities found that they couldn't agree with, such as which language should replace English as the official language, and the choice at that time was Sinhala only. So step by step we went into this situation where young Tamils said, the only choice we have is to separate. We must have our own country. And Prabhakaran was rooted in that type of thinking. Then came the war, a terrible war. We have to deal with that too, because lot of people... But
Jehan, it's been 15 years. Next month we are going to mark 15 years since the end of the war. And we've been, well, most people have been waiting for the government to come up with reconciliation solutions, which hasn't happened. There have been various commissions and various departments, officers, various high-level people appointed. But on the ground, the actual situation is that we're still far apart. But let's if we go into the history of the war, it's going to take forever. But let's look at the here and the now. One issue that I constantly see throughout the country, not particular to the north and the east, is that there are no local government councils at all. There are no Pradeshya Sabhas, there are no municipal councils, no urban councils, and of course no provincial councils. And therefore, there's nowhere for people to go when they have a local problem. And most people, they have local problems, isn't it?
Agree 100%, and that is power sharing. I mean, devolving power to the lowest level, to the local councils and to the provincial councils. That's the principle of subsidiarity used in the EU, for instance. So we must implement that. Now it's there in words. Right? So that is absolutely important, but then also important, the war, 15 years you say. 15 years is a short time for those who have lost their loved ones. We still have parents from the JVP period, 1988-89, who still remember and cry about their lost children and lost husbands and lost daughters, sons and daughters. Those who lost theirs 15 years ago also remember. And they want to commemorate. And now May 18th is coming up. And there is a fear in the north, because I was there, that the government is not going to allow them to commemorate, on the ground that if they commemorate what happened, the loved ones who died in the last battles, but a lot of civilians did die along with a lot of LTT, that if they commemorate that, actually they're commemorating the LTT and trying to bring the LTT back. But they're commemorating their loved ones, their sons and daughters, or their fathers and mothers, and the government is going to try and prevent it. It has, in the past, there have been many occasions which the government tried to prevent through the military, through the police, and they are now wondering whether the same thing is going to happen. The government must, if there is to be reconciliation, the government must let those people commemorate. You know, commemorating the dead is not commemorating and trying to resurrect the LTT. LTT won't resurrect. Because people don't want LTT to come back and fight again. They want normalcy, but they want a government that cares for them and shows that it cares for them by letting them at least commemorate their loved ones. So there's a doubt about this. That's why we don't have reconciliation in our country.
But do you believe that if we do have, now we are supposed to have elections, presidential ones, and then general elections next year, perhaps the two together, no one really knows yet. But after that, we should be having local government elections. But most of the political parties don't even address this. right now. They're so intent on jostling for power for the presidential and the general election, they're not really speaking about the local government elections, are they?
No, they are not. That's true, because now local government, I mean, they've been postponed by over a year. And it was done because maybe the government felt that if the local government elections were held, actually the people who wanted system change would sweep through. And it would send a message then that even those at the top are not the ones who should be governing. So they didn't have the election. And it's understandable, okay, now there's no way in which local government elections, provincial elections are going to be held before either the presidential or the general election, though again there are doubts about that also, because such confusing things are being said. But my belief is that elections will happen. It will be the presidential election. And I'm actually, in a way, I'm hopeful, because our three presidential aspirants, the main ones, actually have not really espoused nationalism, narrow nationalism, racism, and discrimination against others. They don't speak in the language that the other community is a threat. None of them do. And I'm happy about that, because we have to create a society in which we don't look at the other community as a threat, as an enemy, but as a partner, different, but because different, able to do different things together. And that's a strength, that we have to become a society which values diversity and sees in diversity and in difference the ability to create new things together.
But Jehan, as long as power is concentrated in the center, which is not the center of the island geographically, but the western province and Colombo, this is unlikely to happen, because what does happen with the election of members of parliament from any district, in my view, is that they then move to Colombo, because of course they have to attend parliament. So they are more based in Colombo, and this goes for Sinhalese politicians, Tamil politicians, everybody. They are at least half the time based in Colombo. So for the voters, for the public out there, whether it is in Hambantota or Kurunagala or Batiklo, they lose touch with their representatives even further. How are they supposed to go and meet them to discuss various matters? So this is where I keep coming back to the local government, because a local councillor or a mayor is not going to move to Colombo. He or she will have to continue living where that local council is based.
Certainly, I mean, after the elections, the national elections are held, we have to progress to the local and the provincial elections. And that's where the system change is needed. We need two things. We need leaders who are not racist, who look on all Sri Lankan people as equal citizens, as assets that they can work with. And secondly, they must devolve decentralized power, share power to different levels of government, where people will make decisions in favor of will solve their local level problems.
And on that note, I'm afraid we are out of time. Thank you very much to my guest, Dr. Jehan Perera. It was lovely having you once again, Executive Director of the National Peace Council. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.